When I heard that song, I found it on YouTube, and I thought, oh my God, that's Robin. It's just a perfect song for him, and it is from the operatic version of A Christmas Carol. So that's what we're talking about today, as Robin mentioned. But first off, I want to thank Melinda for filling in for me last week. I thought she did a great job. I watched her video. Yeah. John and I celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary in the Florida Keys. So that's where I was playing hooky last week. So, don't you know? Yeah. So all this month, through Christmas, we're going to be using the movie classics as a way to deepen our understanding of our own science of mind teaching. And so we began the month with Miracle on 34th Street. And last week, Melinda and John talked about The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. And next week, we're going to conclude our series with It's a Wonderful Life, which is also our theme for the month. But today, we are looking at the life of Ebenezer Scrooge from A Christmas Carol. And Tiny Tim gives us our topic this morning, God Bless Us, Everyone. So last week, Melinda talked about those implanted events in our subconscious mind that become the irritants in our life. And when we become aware of them and then start to uproot them, we make way for a change or a shift in our consciousness. And that change, that shift in consciousness, results in a change in our life. So our little motto, change your thinking, change your life, is not really just a simple platitude. It's perhaps one of the most profound statements that we can make if we are going to have a life well lived. Because it is our consciousness that determines the effects in our life, and it is only by changing our consciousness can we change what is happening in our world. And as I've said before, anything else, anything that we try to do to change the outside is rearranging chairs on the Titanic. That's what it is, because the result is always going to be the same, because we cannot change the problem or the situation at the level of the problem. We have to go back to root cause, which is consciousness, what we believe, what we think, the story that we tell ourselves. So the classic Christmas films are beloved because we can see that shift in consciousness. It's blatant in these films. You know, in The Grinch, as he realizes that Christmas is about something more than presents. In Doris and Susan, as they come to believe in Kris Kringle and the intangibles like love and compassion and kindness. And of course, we know that Scrooge changes. Robin just gave it away. As he is visited by the ghost of Jacob Marley, his deceased business partner, who warns him of the life that he is now living and heralds the coming of the ghost of Christmas past, Christmas present, and the ghost of the future. Yeah, I've watched several versions of A Christmas Carol, even the Muppets. Yeah. But this weekend, I also read the story as it was written by Charles Dickens. And so I want to begin with this excerpt. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood, years afterward, above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. The firm was known as Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge Scrooge, and sometimes Marley, but he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. And when I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, that's what we do when we cling to that past belief system. We never painted out the old names that would cause a change in our consciousness. We never look or question why we believe what we believe, and is it right to believe it? Scrooge was so intent in his business dealings and making money that he didn't care enough to even correct the sign on his door or someone calling him by his dead partner's name. So my thought was, after I read that, is what names are on my sign? What names are on your sign? What is painted above my door? Unworthy? Unlovable? Not good enough? Not smart enough? Not whatever enough? We should have painted out those names long ago. But if we haven't, this is the time in the season to start right now where we are. So, when Scrooge is visited by Christmas past, he sheds a tear of joy as he's shown his boyhood, home, and friends. But the story does not tell us why Ebenezer's father has no affection for him. But in another scene, we see a child alone in a school when the other boys have gone home to spend Christmas with their families. And we can see that first implant of rejection as it enters Scrooge's heart. In another Christmas, Scrooge's sister, Little Fan, has come to bring him home, saying that his father is much kinder than before. So he returns to his family, and at the appropriate age he becomes apprenticed to Mr. Fezziwig, whose love and joy was contagious. The Ghost of Christmas Present also shows us Scrooge's success in business, and how at the prime of his life, making money has turned his head, so much so that the woman he loves can see the changes in him, realizes that they are on very different paths now, and releases him from the promise they made to each other. And his final vision, the ghost reveals what could have been. Scrooge sees his love now with her husband and beautiful daughter, the daughter that could have been his. So as the time comes for the Ghost of Christmas Past to end, we can see how Scrooge began his journey to the man he has now become, a cold-hearted miser who despises Christmas and has little concern for the world or the people in it. But we can also see the cracks in the armor Scrooge has put around himself, as he says to the Ghost of Christmas Past, "Remove me, I cannot bear it. Take me back, haunt me no longer." Scrooge is compelled by the Ghost of Christmas Past to see the choices that he has made that has led him to where he is. It isn't easy to look at the habits we've created. And yet, if we aren't aware of them, and I think Melinda said this last week, if we're not aware of them, then how can we possibly change them? In many years of experience in this philosophy, I've often heard people say, "This is such a great teaching. Why aren't there more people in it?" And I think that at least one of the answers is because it's too much work. Because when we really live our lives from the inside out, knowing that our consciousness is the creative medium of our experience, we take on a huge responsibility. We can no longer point fingers, wring our hands. If only he, she, it, the situation would change, then I can be happy. It doesn't work that way. So now we have to realize that we have helped to create any situation in our life, those that are wonderful and those that are not so wonderful, and set about shifting our consciousness so that the not so wonderful experiences can be transformed. And Scrooge has begun this process just a little bit with the Ghost of Christmas Past. And now he must confront the Ghost of Christmas Present. But he does so with a new awareness. "Spirit," he says submissively, "conduct me where you will. I went forth last night on compulsion, and I learned a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it." The spiritual journey that you and I are taking willingly and that Scrooge is beginning to understand is not about blame. When we find an area of our life that needs some work, some consciousness shifting, we should not berate ourselves or blame ourselves for our past, perhaps unwise choices. Because it's one thing to hold ourselves accountable for our choices, but it's quite another to condemn ourselves for them. I like to think about the spiritual path. It's like opening a present. I remember that my mentor, Dr. Arthur Chang, said one time, problems are God's gems in ugly wrappers. So rather than self-criticism and condemnation, we should say with Scrooge, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it. And we're much more willing to do the work if we realize that what we're doing is unwrapping God's gems of love, harmony, peace, fulfillment, abundance, all those wonderful intangibles that make life worthwhile. The ghost of Christmas presents has the ability to pass blessings on to others. He takes Scrooge through the town where carols are being sung, people are shopping for gifts and for the meals they are about to prepare, and everyone is wishing each other a very Merry Christmas. And if anyone loses patience because of being crowded or bumped, the spirit of Christmas present sprinkles a bit of incense from his torch, and good humor is restored. They finally stop at the home of Bob Cratchit, Scrooge's underpaid clerk. And after watching this poor family celebrate the holiday with such joy, Scrooge takes an interest in Tiny Tim that he had not felt before, asking Spirit if Tiny Tim will live. I see a vacant seat, the ghost replies, in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die. And they move on to other places of festivities and stop at the home of Scrooge's nephew, Fred. His lovely wife and many friends are sharing time and laughter together. Every year, Fred has asked Scrooge to join them, but is met with bah humbug, and Scrooge wanting nothing to do with him or his family or their Christmas celebration. So as Scrooge and the ghost look in on Fred and his friends, they are talking about Scrooge. And Fred said it doesn't matter how unpleasant his uncle is, but that he will go on being nice to him, and he will continue to invite him every single year. And he says just because Scrooge's countenance is so disagreeable doesn't mean that he should change his own. And that's another little gem, I think, that we can use to shift our consciousness. When our good words or deeds are met with scorn, what do? Generally, we shift our good nature to match what just happened, don't we? But we don't have to. Fred is right on. Just because someone out there doesn't behave in a manner consistent with ours doesn't mean that we have to change. You remember a story about two friends walking down the street, and one stopped at the newsstand to buy a paper and said to the stand owner with a smile, "Good morning, how are you today?" Which was returned with a sour face and a grunt. And the other man who was with him said, "You've been buying a paper from this man for years. Is he always like that?" "Always," replies the friend. "But why should his bad disposition spoil my own?" And the truth is that we do send out good vibes. And when we do, even if they are not acknowledged by the intended recipient, those vibes continue on, and they bump into others who are receptive and whose mood is lifted because of them. And so not only do we maintain our pleasant feelings, but like the ghost of Christmas present, we've passed our blessing on to others. Scrooge and the ghost of Christmas present continue with their travels, with the Spirit pouring his blessings on all who are receptive, paying special attention to the ill, the downtrodden, the poor, and teaching his precepts to Scrooge as he goes. And as the end of Spirit's time draws near, he shows Scrooge two raggedy, miserable children that have been hidden under his robe. The boy is ignorance. The girl is want. The Spirit tells Scrooge, "Beware them both and all of their degree, but most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased." "Have they no refuge or resource?" cries Scrooge. And the ghost parrots back to Scrooge his own words, which now make him cringe. Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? So Scrooge comes face to face with the man he has become, and he's desperate to change, which brings us to his encounter with the ghost of the future, a spectral sight shrouded in a black robe. And Scrooge realizes that this encounter is for his good as well, and even though he's frightened, he says to the ghost, "Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any specter I have seen, but as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear you company and do it with a thankful heart." Scrooge is shown the gravestone of Tiny Tim, the lack of mourners at his own death and his own gravestone. And he asks, are these the shadows of things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only? Spirit, hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been but for this intercourse. Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. So through Scrooge, we can see the law of cause and effect in full motion. Scrooge is now fully aware that the law by which he has lived his life has come back literally to haunt him. And it's not the life he wants. So he makes a promise to the specter. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Holding up his hands in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, there is an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrinks, collapses, and dwindles down to a bedpost. And Scrooge awakens to Christmas morning. Time to deliver the best goose to the Cratchits, give a handsome donation to a charity he had shunned, join his nephew Fred in fun and games. And the day after Christmas, he plays a joke on Bob Cratchit, ultimately giving him a substantial raise, filling his workspace with warmth and light, and offering to help the family, especially Tiny Tim. And he continues what he has begun, and according to Charles Dickens, Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good at which some people did not have their fill of laughter at the outset. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. The beauty of this story is that even the most hard-hearted among us can change. And if Scrooge can change to such a degree, then we can change those nasty little habits that we've acquired, those persistent little irritants, by changing our consciousness. And yes, it requires work. It requires discipline. It requires vigilance. But some of us have lived a lifetime with certain mindsets that we know are not useful. So we have set up what Thomas Trord called grooves of thought. And if you think of a lane in a bowling alley, without reconditioning, a groove forms. So if your ball gets anywhere near it, it will fall into that groove. And the same thing with thought. In changing our consciousness, we are reconditioning our thinking lanes so that new patterns can be formed. We are creating a new cause that we want to set as our default, so that our thinking habitually and automatically reverts into alignment with the God attributes that are our natural heritage. So Christmas, I think, is a beautiful time to retrain our thoughts. People do have that Christmas spirit, and we can pick up and add to that vibration. We have these incredible classic films that not only bring us joy, but show us, by example, what happens when we shift our consciousness to encompass the warmth and love of the season. And so I want to end, again, in the words of Charles Dickens as he speaks about Scrooge and about us. It was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. Thank you. No. Thank you.